Nestled deep in the Appalachian hills of Fayetteville, West Virginia, stood a house that would become the center of one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries in American history. George Sodder was a hard-working Italian immigrant who had built a comfortable life running a trucking and construction business. He and his wife, Jennie, had 10 children together, filling their farmhouse with noise and laughter. By Christmas of 1945, life was good. 5 of the younger children were especially excited. It was Christmas Eve, and the house was alive with the anticipation of gifts and celebration. George was known in the community for his outspoken criticism of Mussolini. He had even publicly called the Italian dictator a murderer. In the weeks before Christmas, the Sodder household received several unsettling phone calls. Wrong numbers, strange voices, calls that made Jennie uncomfortable. A stranger had also come to the house, asking to hire George's trucks. When no one was looking, he examined the fuse box near the back door. On the evening of December 24th, 1945, the Sodder family celebrated Christmas together, unaware it would be the last time they were all in the same room. Around 10 o'clock, 5 of the younger children went upstairs to bed. Maurice, 14, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jennie, 8, and little Betty, just 5 years old. George stayed downstairs to finish some work. Jennie fell asleep on the couch. The house grew quiet. At around 12:30 in the morning, the phone rang. Jennie answered it. A woman's voice asked for someone she didn't know, then laughed and hung up. She thought nothing of it. She fell back to sleep. Sometime after 1 o'clock in the morning, fire erupted inside the living room. Jennie Sodder woke to smoke and the crackling roar of fire. The living room was already burning. George, still awake outside, rushed into the burning house. He tried to climb the stairs to reach the 5 children sleeping above. The flames were too intense. The staircase was fully engulfed. He could not get through. George ran outside to get the ladder he kept by the side of the house. It was gone. He ran to his trucks, hoping to drive one close enough to climb up to the second-floor windows, but the engines would not start. In desperation, George threw a cement block through a second-floor window and tried to climb up. He fell back. He tried again and again. Neighbors arrived to help, but the fire moved with terrifying speed. There was nothing anyone could do. The fire department was called. It did not arrive until well after the house had burned to the ground. The closest station was just 2.5 miles away. By the time dawn came, the Sodder family home was gone, and 5 of George and Jennie's children were nowhere to be found. As the sun rose over Fayetteville on Christmas morning, George and Jennie stood before the smoldering wreckage of everything they had built. They searched through the debris for any sign of their children, any bone, any piece of clothing. They found nothing. In a fire that hot, bones would have been reduced to ash. But even ash contains remnants. Teeth survive. Fragments survive. There was nothing. The local fire marshal arrived and, after a brief examination, declared the fire accidental. The case was closed. George Sodder refused to accept it. He knew something was wrong. He had known it from the moment the house began to burn. George soon discovered that the telephone lines to the house had been cut, not damaged in the fire, but deliberately sliced. His ladder was found thrown into the bushes nearly 80 feet from the house. It had not burned. It had been moved. A mechanic examined the truck engines that had refused to start that night. They had been tampered with. Someone had removed a part critical to ignition. 2 witnesses came forward. They had seen children matching the description of the Sodder kids being driven away in a car on the night of the fire. Another witness reported seeing a group of children with an Italian-speaking couple at a local motel the morning after the fire. The children looked frightened. Experts who later examined the case noted something troubling. The Sodder house burned far too quickly. A wood frame house of its size should have taken much longer to collapse. A plastic object found in the rubble was later identified as a napalm bomb, the kind used by the military. It had not come from inside the house. George Sodder had made enemies. His vocal opposition to Mussolini had drawn the anger of Italian fascist sympathizers living in the United States. Weeks before the fire, a man had come to the Sodder property. He examined the fuse box carefully, then stared at the sleeping arrangements of the children. A life insurance salesman had visited George the year before, threatening that if he didn't purchase a policy, he would regret it before the year was out. George wrote to the FBI. Federal investigators became involved. They looked into the case and found nothing conclusive. Months passed, then years. Every lead evaporated. The official position remained: accidental fire, children presumed dead. George Sodder refused to let the world forget. In 1952, 7 years after the fire, he erected a large billboard along Route 16. On it were the faces of his 5 missing children, and a $10,000 reward for information leading to their whereabouts. The billboard stood for years. Drivers on Route 16 passed it every day. Tips came in from across the country. None of them led anywhere. George and Jennie grew old in a rebuilt house on the same property where their children had vanished. They never stopped searching. In 1967, 22 years after the fire, Jennie Sodder received something in the mail. The envelope had no return address. Inside was a single black and white photograph. The photograph showed a young man in his late 20s. He was handsome, with dark eyes and a serious expression. She did not recognize him. Or did she? On the back of the photograph, someone had written, "Louis Sodder, I love Brother Frankie. Ilil Boys, A90132. Jennie Sodder sat down at the kitchen table and wept. It was the first evidence she had ever received that her son might still be alive. George laid the photograph beside an old picture of Louis taken before the fire. The resemblance was undeniable. George immediately hired a private detective to track down the man in the photograph. The detective followed the lead to the southern United States, where the trail seemed to point. The detective was never heard from again. He simply disappeared. George Sodder died in 1969 at the age of 74. He never learned what happened to his children. The most widely believed theory is this: the children did not die in the fire. They escaped, or were taken, while the house burned, and someone made sure their parents could not follow. Some investigators believe George's outspoken anti-fascist politics made him a target. The fire may have been a message, and the children leverage. Another theory suggests the children were smuggled out of the country, possibly to punish George, or to use them as a warning to others who spoke out. Jennie Sodder kept the billboard on Route 16 for the rest of her life. She updated it, maintained it, and refused to take it down. Jennie Sodder died in 1989 at the age of 84. The case was never officially solved. In the years since, historians, journalists, and investigators have repeatedly returned to the case. It has become one of the most analyzed unsolved mysteries in American history. The site of the Sodder home has been excavated more than once. Each time, the same answer: nothing. The only piece of evidence that has never been explained is the photograph. Who sent it? How did they know where to find Jennie? And why wait 22 years?